This photo, this slide shows you, oh, okay, it's been rearranged. So, the Vietnam War, we began in the mid-70s. The Vietnam War had been going for 10 years, more than 10 years. Was anyone here around at that time? It was a long time ago. So, of course, this affected most of all the country of Vietnam. It also deeply affected the United States. It was hugely divisive. There was more than 10 years of war. There was more than 10 years of protest. And it left the country in a different state. It certainly left Vietnam devastated. It left the United States full of trauma and division. It was also a time when there were these liberation movements really surging, like the women's movement. Women of the World Unite. Women were speaking up out on the streets, and the civil rights movement. It was the kind of high point of some of these liberation movements in the United States and in other places as well. This was all in the mid-70s. And it was a time of a youth culture, a counterculture. Young people like us, we were young, believe it or not, we were young. We felt we could make the world new and better. We believed that we could take everything to pieces and rebuild it in a better way than our parents. And this book, cover of that book, the Whole Earth Catalogue. Does anyone remember the Whole Earth Catalogue? It was kind of a manual for young people, or people of any ages, but it was mostly young people who believed that they could create this better world. And it had instructions for everything, for making a revolution, for making clothes, for making food, for making solar ovens. It was kind of, somebody described it as kind of the internet before the internet. It was just a print book, several editions of it. It was our Bible. It was our Bible that told us how we could come together and how we could build this world that we believed in. It was also a time of tremendous innovation in all areas, but certainly in the arts and certainly in theatre. So this is a photo of an experimental theatre group called Mabu Minds, which was influential to us. And then this is a photo of us. Can you recognize us? Pre-playback. Before playback, we had a little theatre group, experimental theatre group called It's All Grace. And this was a performance that we did outdoors for people with developmental disabilities. And we devised it improvisationally, and then we performed it. There was no script, but it wasn't actually improvisation on the spot. So we and many, many other young people were creating artistic work in a way that hadn't been done before. It was all part of this new world that we thought we were creating. And that led us to playback theatre. So yes, here's Jonathan. In those days, in those early days, we all wore these stupid overalls. Hannah's bearing witness to that. She was there. She was only 4 years old, but she was there. But he also had this hat. So Jonathan was funny, was clowny, but also serious, and still is. And, we were creating this out of nothing, in a way, although we were also drawing on story traditions and experimental theatre traditions and psychodrama traditions, but we were creating something new. We knew that we were creating something new. If we could have seen this, we would have been amazed. We did not imagine that nearly 50 years later, we would all be here. But we were willing to, even with this basic idea of playback, we were willing to experiment. And that photo at the top is from a show that we did called I Dreamt I Saw the Hostages. Different hostages from today's hostages. But it was a show where we alternated rehearsed pieces and audience stories. We did a lot of experimentation that's kind of lost. We didn't continue with it, but that was one of our experiments. And that's just a photo of some of the early members of the original company. The three people on the right are no longer living, which happens. We disappear off the earth. And playback continues. This is a photo from my group, which is active right now. And we are doing, as many of you are doing, we are doing our best to now face the challenges of today. There are resonances between today and 50 years ago when this began. I think we do not have the optimism now that we had back then. We have vision, we have determination, we have our experience, but we don't have that innocence that we had 50 years ago. And so the frontiers are open for what is going to come, what are we going to see next. And I must say that this gathering, this opening so far, is offering a vision, and I'm really glad to be witnessing that.
Looking at all of you, I'm so glad I woke up this morning. So, in playback theater, we're more than just actors. We're citizen actors.
Yep.
So, the idea of citizen actors brings with it responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to tell your own story, is to know your own story, is to understand your own story. But that's not enough. We also need to recognize our biases, our prejudices. It's not easy work, it's very confronting. But that isn't enough. It's not enough just to know yourself. We need to have some knowledge, we need to know something about the context where we're working. So I was never interested in history. But since I've been doing playback theater and had the privilege to travel around the world, this is just some of my history books.
Wow.
Of course. Yeah, wow. Actually, it's not all history. But we never know enough. But we have a responsibility to learn as much as we can for every audience we work with. Because if we don't do all of those things that I mentioned, you will be afraid to hear the story. or you will mishear the story, or your senses will block out whatever is being told, and you can make some very big mistakes. You can insult the teller. You can harm the teller. And not only the teller, but the community who's listening. I just want to say something about training. So training has been mentioned already, the CPT and especially, and there are now, I think, 16 affiliate schools of the Center for Playback Theater, training institutes, and it all leads up to what's called the Playback Theater Leadership Course. Yeah, how many, let's stand up if you're a graduate of taking a leadership class at the Center for Playback Theater. Not only in time, but in money as well, and to train in playback theater. And why? So, when we started a course, we had no thought about training. We learned as we were doing. That's what a theater company does. Of course. And you will learn that way. But training has many advantages. One is that it helps maintain the standard of playback theater. It helps us share best practices in playback theater, especially now that playback exists in so many different cultures where there are wonderful innovations happening all over. So my mind is just going completely blank. Training gives you a sense of the theory of why playback works. Something like narrative articulation can help you assess your work and improve it more quickly. And perhaps most important, the training gives you a very strong sense of the ethics of playback theater. That playback theater is not automatically wonderful. That if you don't have the sense of this ethical imperative that's with us all the time, playback theater can actually cause harm. So the training can help you with all those things. Well, that's it for me. I want to say that I feel just wonderful to see you all here, especially this. And during these days, while we're here together, let's be citizen actors for each other. Thank you.